Hi everybody, I'm DK Smith. In addition to being a WordPress security expert, I run the WordPress Brooklyn Meetup. I organize that. I've been online for a long, long time, like since 97, 98, which kind of makes me a dinosaur in terms of being online. I was online when SEO was hiding words in backgrounds and keyword stuffing worked. A little bit more about me. I started doing SEO consulting in 98. My company is getcustomers.com. Back in the late 90s, you could get all kinds of great domain names. So I bought that in April 98. I discovered WordPress in 2004. I collect jazz albums. And I was surfing around. I saw Miles Davis and I think Art Blakey and Mingus. Those were the names of the first 3 versions of WordPress, or 3 formal releases. And I went over there and I looked at this thing. I'm like, what is this thing? But the guy's into jazz, it must be cool. I downloaded it. I had it on my computer for a few months and I asked one of my guys, I was like, do you understand this MySQL PHP thing? No, I can do XHTML, HTML sites in my sleep, but PHP, MySQL, what is this? And he was like, oh yeah, I know databases and stuff. I said, install it, see what it does. So he stuck it on a site and we played with it a little bit and I said, hey, why don't we use it for an affiliate site? We ran lots of affiliate sites. We still run affiliate sites. So you can get great domains in the late 90s. So we stuck it on an affiliate site and about 3 or 4 weeks later, we were #1 across Google. I mean, just #1, literally 3 or 4 weeks. All the search engines. So I'm like, ooh, okay, wait, we're pretty good. We thought about that. Let's put up another one. Another one goes up 4 or 5 weeks later, it's #1. We do it about 4 more times. I'm like, let's pick something that we don't own, that we've never thought about. We put that up, it takes about 5 or 6 weeks. We figure out that WordPress is a search engine monster. Early WordPress, and maybe it still is, but the playing field has leveled out. So we started using it for our client sites. The only problem we had was we were getting them top rankings too fast. They were saying, hey, we're paying for a year, we've got top rankings in 4 months, what do we need to pay you for? So we didn't tell them about the CMS, we didn't even tell them it was WordPress. I don't know if any of you have ever heard of Dennis DiBernardi, Semiologic.com. There were no themes, you've heard of them, yeah. Dennis was the first person to start selling commercial themes, and so we got into Semiologic because, God, we had to make WordPress look better than it did. And there was another gentleman, Sherman Wu. Sherman made about $5 million on the first WordPress learning videos. Sherman retired. He stumbled into that and made a bunch of money and just like quit. I mean, so far back that you all have never heard of him. So WordPress was a search engine monster. It was a little wild and woolly for clients. Steve, I know, is using it, but in the beginning, WordPress was kind of like building a car out in your driveway. It might go 110 miles an hour, but it always felt like something was going to blow off. Yeah, I mean, it did, literally. So we started hacking it. I mean, we started doing things that are standard now, custom post types and roles and managers, but mostly we didn't let clients in. By 2007, we had let some clients in. And I have to set the scene for you. I'm a single parent. I co-parent my daughter. She's with me about half of the month. So 4:30 in the morning, one morning the phone rings. It's not a time when she's with me, so I panic. I'm up because the only reason the phone rings at 4:30 in the morning is your child. And it's my assistant, Kathy. And she's like, I'm like, what's up? And she's, well, I'm sorry to bother you. And I'm like, she's like, I need you to go look at the sites. And I'm like, it's 4:30 in the morning. What did you do? Did you work on something? You make something happen? You just need to go downstairs, go in the office and look at the sites. I'm like, all right, I'll call you back. I got staggered. No, I think I better stay on the line. I'm like, okay. So we take the long route downstairs to my office and I finally get the thing booted up. And she says, go look at the sites. And I look at our main site and this is what I find. I kid you not. This is what was on our site. I don't know if you can see. Let me see if shrink it down if everybody can see the. This music player at the bottom was playing some music that was appropriate to the image up top. And this is now about 5 a.m. in the morning, and now I really have to go to the bathroom. So I tell Kathy, look, I'll call you back. And she thinks I'm really going to have lose it. I'm like, I just have to go sit and think. I'll call you back. Well, this is what led to me becoming a WordPress security expert, because it's 2007. We've now let some clients get on WordPress. We're using it for affiliate sites. We're getting top rankings. We're making money. And all I can think of is, well, if you Googled WordPress security in 2007, you didn't find much. And I figured, okay, I know what to do to get rid of it, but the problem is, what do I do to keep it from coming back at 2 o'clock this afternoon? Because I had some pretty high-end clients. We had managed to get them on WordPress. They didn't know. And if this happened, it wasn't going to be pretty at all. Because they didn't even know they were on this CMS called WordPress. WordPress is free. That's still an issue maybe for some of you with some clients. I've had clients, we do more development than security. I've had clients say to me, well, you know, WordPress is free. And I've had to say to them, well, download it and I'll give you 60 days. And if you can make it do what we did for your site, I'll give you all your money back. But don't hire somebody else, because we'll know. If you go get somebody else to help you, we'll be able to tell. How many people here know that the WordPress core team has a security team? Did anybody know that? Raise your hands if you knew that. Yeah, very few people knew that. I'm going to come back to that. I wanted to ask that question. So that led to my education as a WordPress security person. And so I'll go into some of the facts. The cost of repairing a hacked site is just ridiculous. I found this graphic the other day. It's wonderful. Approximately 1 day to figure out how it happened, another day to understand what happened, maybe a day to clean it up and restore it. It says at least $100 to spend, at least $100, a 75% chance that you will fully recover and capable, you know, fully restore and capable to recover, and then you lose time in traffic. I would have added another day of maybe a sleepless night worrying about clients if it's a client site. And that last issue, if it can be repaired. Matt Mullenweg at the State of the Word in San Francisco last year told the story towards the end of his speech about a friend of his called him up one day, Matt, my site's been hacked. And he's like, okay, let me see what I can do. So he goes in and he can't fix it. And he calls like Andrew Nason and one of the core team, and a couple of them jump on it and they can't fix it. And so Matt calls him back like in a couple of days and says, look, man, I think you just ought to just scrap it and start over. Now, if you go online and you find Matt's speech from San Francisco, they edited that out. I was there live. Anybody who was there live heard that. But they took that out of the State of the Word speech because I think that was, you know, a little bit much for this application that's growing by leaps and bounds. But the reality is that the inventor of WordPress and his core team could not fix this really bad hack. So let that be a big warning to you, okay? If Matt Mullenweg and the core team says, man, scrap it and start over, okay, it's pretty serious. So that's if it can be repaired. And we do have them. I'll give you a little strategy for what happens if it can't be repaired. But there are plenty of times when it can't be repaired. It's just not worth it. So, fact, 37% of WordPress sites are cracked through collateral damage. And what do I mean by collateral damage? I mean they're not even trying to really crack or hack a site. All right, it happens because of a lot of things about the internet. Starting with layer 1, we go protect your system. If you're on a PC, the odds are probably 90% that you have got malware or rootkit or something on there that's leaking information. You know, unless you have really taken, you know, the time to clean it up and install the right tools, PCs are just, you know, it's just an invitation to get, you know, to have all kinds of malware put on your computer. Once that's on there, it sends passwords. I mean, this really happens. You may think it hasn't happened to me. I guarantee you, if you start to use some of these tools, particularly like Malwarebytes, it's a pretty good malware scanner, you're going to find things on your PC. All kinds of things. That's one of the biggest ways that people get your passwords. We go to hacker sites where they have passwords and usernames and domain names listed. You know, this is a kind of a reputation, you know, kind of show-off thing for a lot of hackers. So they share things. So somebody who's not even a WordPress hacker, somebody who has planted rootkits or something on computers, they find all kinds of passwords, they post them. I'm not going to go to any of those hacker sites, but there are hacker sites where they share information. They do better worksheets and better instruction pages than I see on Microsoft and some of the big software companies. I mean, screen captures. I mean, we use some of them as models for teaching for our clients. They're so well done. So you really have got to protect your system. Now, you know, I said PCs. Mac people don't laugh because it's now happening to Mac people too. So I heard the Mac people sniggle a little bit. It's happening to you too. You have got to Don't bother to do anything else. Don't bother to use, you know, some kind of more security that I'm going to talk about. If you do not scan your PC, you're wasting your time. It would be like, you know, putting a new roof on the house when the back wall is hanging open. You know, what's the point? You've really got to start there, and that's why I call that layer 1. Same with Macs. A lot of things are getting into Macs now. How many people here are Mac users? Okay, keep your hand up if you knew it had a firewall. How many of you knew Mac had a firewall? Yeah, not bad, about half, okay. There's a firewall built into Mac, yes.
What about iOS?
Not my forte. I have to ask my guys about that. I'm sure there's probably something that attacks it. There's something that attacks everything. If things are attacking Macs now, I'm sure iOS and Android is probably susceptible. How to configure, this is really good, it's on Mac Instruct. And all these links will be in the presentation. How to configure your Mac's firewall. Okay? For those of you that didn't know you had one, I recommend you just Google how to configure your Mac's firewall, Mac Instruct, you'll find it. You need to do that. Komodo, firewalls. It's really important to run a firewall. I don't know if you've heard of AVG, you know, antivirus, there's ZoneAlarm. This is a really good firewall. Software firewall. It stops all kinds of things. We have actually found hacks. We have a professional version of this running on a server where we store things. And we've had sites that we've cleaned up and we couldn't really figure out how it got hacked. And 4 or 5 weeks later, months later, we're archiving it and it has set off the firewall that's on our server. And it tells us, you know, exactly what is, and we're like, you know, so now we do that sometimes. We just download a whole site, we shove it onto the server and see if the Komodo screams. So this is the free version, or you could pay for it. We have like an enterprise version that we run. It's really good. It stops things. If you go to a website that's got something on it, it will let you know. If an email's got something, it scans emails as they come in. If you pick up something accidentally, if you've already got things, malware and things on your system, when you run this, it'll let you know. So
it runs as a server. Does it run on an individual?
This runs on individual. We have a server version of it, but yeah, this is free, and there's a free, and you don't need to pay for it. It's
How do you spell it?
Komodo, C-O-M-O-D-O. Yep. They've got a free one, or you can pay if you're the kind of person who wants some support. Pay for it. It's worth paying for. Malwarebytes. I paid for Malwarebytes. This is like, I mean, you know, it really. This is like our cruiserweight kind of anti-malware, you know, anti-rootkit. So I paid for that. You know, it was just worth it. I don't know, it's $39, $49. If it keeps my computer safe, keeps my client safe, what do I care? So that's step 1. If you don't do this, don't bother to do anything else. Like I said, it would be like putting a new roof on the house when your back wall is hanging open. So you've got to start there. That's why we call it layer 1. Layer 2, guard your network. Okay? You have a network. What's your network? It's the ISP that you use to go up to the internet. It's your FTP program. It's anything that you communicate over the web. You've got to guard your network. You've got to protect it. Why? Because somebody's always listening on the web. The easiest thing to do is to set up a packet sniffer out on an unprotected server and just sniff all the traffic that comes through. And believe it or not, FTP transmits in plain text or simple hash. So when you log in with FTP and you communicate, you're sending your password and the username right over the internet in a format that anybody who's out there who's sniffing traffic can pick up. Okay? So you cannot use FTP. FTP, I say, is like screaming information out the window. Actually, you're probably safer screaming your information out the window because the odds that there's a hacker or somebody who will understand it outside your window is pretty low. But FTPing over the web, I bet you everybody's here, traffic's here has been sniffed at one point or another. Whether it's anybody who's looking to grab passwords to WordPress or not, it's another issue. But it's just so common, it's so easy to do. So you've got to guard that network. 35% of WordPress hacks are drive-bys. You know, the hacker already has the username and password. And we know this because we go to hacker sites and we get them all the time. As a matter of fact, one of my favorite things to do is we go get 50 or 60 and then I email and call the owners. and say, have you checked your site lately? Because the odds are if they haven't been hacked, and we'll send them a screen capture of there's your username, your domain name, and your password out on some hacker site. So they're really just drive-bys, you know? So you've got to guard your network. Passwords, you know, long, complex passwords. And if you think that's not important, just wait. You'll be calling me, you'll be emailing me, you'll be crying, you'll be back at that earlier slide with the 5 days of agony. You've got to use long, you know, it's called mnemonics. My daughter's name, I can crack that top one bad, my daughter's name, in about 30 minutes. Okay, using some pretty simple tools that you can find on the web. My guys could do that top one in 10. The bottom one, like 50,000 hours with a supercomputer. So just by changing, and a mnemonic that's my daughter's name. It's the same as the top, just kind of saying a mnemonic. So you've got to use complex passwords. It's not a joke. Don't think you're going to get away with it. I have a client, and one day I got into her site, and she was like, you know, I said, I'm in as you. And she said, how'd you in as you? I said, you know, and it's somebody from the PTA. I said, you used your son's name and birthday. Remember, I know the kids since kindergarten. And she was like, oh. I said, yeah, and if I can figure that out, other people can figure that out. But they don't have to know you. They can use, there's all kinds of tools. If you're really not good at imagination, you know, you're not good at making them up, here's a great tool, Safepasswd. Okay? Don't use any of their passwords are better than something you use yourself, but go down to all secure, drag this over to about 14, get yourself a crazy password, okay? Now I'll take something like that and I'll add a few more characters to it. I'll put a dash in the middle of those letters or something like that. But that's a pretty complex password. You notice it says very strong. So if you're not good at making these up, or if you don't have any mnemonics to use, or if you're sending them out to clients, use that. You know, just go for it. It makes it kind of brainless and simple. It's pretty easy. It's free. Okay, as I said, FTP sends data as plain text. You've got to use SFTP to connect to websites, or SSH. If you're with a web hosting company that doesn't offer SFTP or SSH, you need a new hosting company. It's nothing special. It's nothing fancy. Okay? If you're connecting any other method, you're exposing yourself and your client to being hacked. Remember, 35% are drive-bys, so you know you've just got to do it, and you know you can get away with it. Force SSL admin. You know, SSLs are cheap. You can get them for $30 now. So when we get a client, even a development client, we put an SSL on their site. We don't even ask them. We don't even tell them. Sometimes if it's a big enough project, we'll buy it for 2 or 3 years. And then we'll tell them, oh, you know, in 2 years, you're going to have to renew this. And we make sure that the email comes to them. But they're really cheap. And you can force the whole WordPress admin over on an SSL. That's just as secure as the websites you use to buy, purchase things, and you know, your credit card encryption. Yes?
Sorry, I'm a complete beginner. Can you explain what SSL is?
Oh, then you're going to have to ask somebody that's just too low. That's a secure encryption. Have you ever seen the little padlock when you go to a shopping site? Yeah. It's called secure sockets layer. And I won't go any further than that. But yeah, you have the same encryption as an e-commerce site, as somebody who's buying things. So everybody should be using, you know, SFTP or SSH. If it's an important site, if it's your main business site, if it's a client site, like I said, SSL certificates are dirt cheap now. You don't need a brand name. This is one, I mean, you know, any brand name. You don't need to go to Network Solutions. You don't need a Komodo one. Just anybody's. Any big company sells SSLs at this point. $25, $30, just the lowest level SSL. You don't need a fancy one. You just want that secure connection for your whole WordPress admin. Okay? Right now, we're only a little bit way into the presentation. We have stopped a third or half of all the hack attempts right here. Okay? We've already killed, I call them the script kiddies. We've been doing this a long time, and we began to notice, we map and we kind of do a lot of data mapping of things. We noticed that we had a lot of hacks, a big occurrence between 2 and 5:15, 5:30. And we were trying to figure out what it was, and then I used to work at a private school, and I realized it's when the kids get home and the parents are still at work. And one day we caught a kid. A kid broke into our site, one of my clients' site, and he left really good tracks, and he was out in a rural area. In a rural area, you can trace an IP really, really well. And with the Google map thing, I came down, there were about 6 or 7 houses in this whole area, maybe like a 30-mile radius. So I was like, okay, it's one of them. I was able to get all the phone numbers. I called. you know, hi, do you have a son in middle school? Finally, the third house, yes. I said, well, I believe your son, da-da-da, and this woman went crazy. I said, here's who I am, here's my phone number. You go online, I'm not some pervert here. Your son has broken into a website, it's a federal offense. My next phone call is to the police in your town. My client is livid. So, all right, fine, move on. About 7:15, the phone rings, and I pick up, hello, Mr. Smith? This is Johnny Williams, and I'm so sorry. I didn't mean to do anything like that, and I'll never do it again, and I want punishment, and please don't call the police, and and this kid's crying. So I'm a parent, so I gave him like, this is very serious, and you're in a lot of trouble. I know. I said, is one of your parents on the line? His father was on the line. I said, okay, I'm going to speak to your father. We'll see what we can do. He got off the phone, and I told his father, look, I'm a parent, and I'll wind my client down because this kid is like 11 years old and he's not going to go to jail for this, but it is real serious and he should be punished. So kids, we've just kept all the kids out. We call them skitties, script kiddies. So, it's like being mugged by a 6-year-old. God, if you're going to mug me, be a pro. I'm not going to have some 6, 7, 8-year-old mugging me, It's like, so, we've stopped that now. Do not, this one may be common sense, but do not email passwords and usernames. I see so many people who do that. If you think it's easy to sniff packet traffic, it's even easier to sniff email traffic. So now you're emailing your client passwords and usernames. Use PassPack. This is a really great, and there's probably some others like this. Share passwords with your team. It's dirt cheap. Look at that, group, $4 a month. I mean, 1,500 passwords, 15 users. I mean, it's dirt cheap. So use PassPack, use something like that. And then once you use PassPack, call the client, don't email that password. I mean, I say this jokingly, but so many people do. We do a lot of security audits for big companies. So I sent one out to a company that does about 150 million a year from an e-commerce site. And so I sent them out the audit, and I got back answers and stuff, and so we did this phone call, and I said, and one thing that they had passed was social engineering. And I said, pass, no problem in that area. I asked you to email me the password and usernames, and your assistant called. So in this conference call with the CEO, she said, we were wondering about you at that point. When we read that, we were like, does this guy know anything about security? He's asking us to email all of that? Well, I told them we do that because if we say to clients, you don't do this, do you? Everybody says, oh no, I don't do that. I bet you if I asked you and you say, oh no, I've never done that. I see from your faces a lot of you have. So we don't ask. We just ask them to do it. And if they do it, then they fail that part of the security audit. And I call them, usually when it comes in, either I or my assistant, we call them right away. Okay, you just failed that part. Now get in there and roll all the passwords. Get in your, go call your hosting company, get into your, your web host manager, your cPAN, whatever it is, and change all the passwords you just sent me. Because you've just exposed yourself, and I don't want to be part of the hack. This will be the time when someone's sniffing traffic. Harden your browser. I've got a bunch of things on here. I'll give you a little navigation. Harden your browser. HTTPS everywhere. It forces anything. If I go to a website, it has a secure, it automatically forces it over to the SSL. If you look at this URL, I'm on HTTPS automatically. They've got one for Chrome and they've got one for Firefox. Install it, use it. It just runs automatically. It's really simple. Harden that browser up. I mean, I have a theory, it's called multiple layers of security. And each one of these layers, there's things here that are important, there's things here that might only be like 2 or 3%, but it's cumulative. And by the time you get to the end, your site is really secure. You're thinking securely, your clients know how to keep it secure, and your site is secure. So any one of these things, you might say, oh, DK, is that really important? Not in and of itself, but it's that much more. And if you can be 1 inch more secure from something really simple, why not? Why not do it? It's just too easy. NoScript, I've got a thing called NoScriptDown here. It'll drive you crazy at first, but it blocks all the scripts that are running on any site that you haven't given permission to run scripts. So when you first start using it, every site that you've been going to, even your own sites, the JavaScript won't work, the navigation work, all kinds of things. You just go down in the corner. I don't know if it'll pop up high enough to see. You go down in the corner and you give it permission. Allow scripts, forbid scripts, you know, it's pretty simple. It runs right there. It's Chrome, it's Firefox. It's just too easy. So harden the browser up, you know. Where are we now? Okay, WordPress Security 101. That's layer 3. I mean, there's all these blog posts out there, and I'm sure there's going to be a lot of questions about that. But these are things that you should just do, you know, at every standard install. Change the database name from WP. You know, when WordPress installs, you know, it installs with the word, you know, WP and the underscore. Well, as you set up the WP config, when you put in all the other code and the database name, you can change that database name. So do that right away. I'm going to show you a plugin that'll help you do it after the fact. But do that when you first set up WordPress. Change that database name. That stops all kinds of, like, you know, cross-site scripts, SQL injections. It's just one less thing, you know, that a hacker knows. Everything they know gives them like an inch, you know, an inch, an inch, an inch, an inch. So if that one simple thing can foil a hacker who's doing just common SQL injections by searching for sites that are using WP as the you know, prefix for your MySQL database, just do it. You know, do not use the admin username. That used to be the default username in WordPress, and now it's not. Well, do you know how many sites we go to all the time and somebody has used the admin again? The $150 million e-commerce thing, their webmaster was using admin. Do not use that. That's like, you know, that's like the number one. Everybody hunts for that. So they've already got half of it. You might think the password, the complex password's enough, but you don't want them to have anything. So if they've got the username, you know, then it makes it that much easier for them to fish for a password. And there's mechanical tools that do this. There's tools. There's password crackers. Somebody doesn't sit there and try all the passwords. A bot will hit the site and run through common passwords. So it just, you know, hardens it up a little bit. Add this to your htaccess folder. Options, all indexes. That blocks them all. Your folders can't be looked at. I love going to sites and I pop open like the uploads folder, or I pop open the images folder, I look in their code and I find something like that, and then I go look, and I usually send them a screen capture of all their files being exposed. So just adding that to your htaccess blocks all the folders. Nobody can open those folders up. So some servers do it automatically, some don't. It's just easy enough. Once again, when you're setting up WordPress the first time, just add that to your htaccess. Move WP config. WP config lives in the root of WordPress. You can move it up a level. I don't know if most of you are using, did this croak on me? You can probably hear me anyway. Most of you are probably using cPanel or FTPing in. It's usually, the file is usually the public HTML file. Hello? There we go. It's usually, the root folder is usually public HTML. You can take WP config and move it up to that level. Move it up to the next level above that, that root level when you first log in. WordPress will find it automatically if you move it up a level. But that level is really blocked from outside eyes and from outside access.
Install WordPress in a subdirectory below public HTML, move the WP config levels up out of the public.
You'd have to do a little bit of more work to tell it where it is if you go 2 levels up. But you can. You can. That's a good question. I'll add that code into this presentation. Needless to say, backup, backup, backup. Now, what's his name from WP Engine talked about backups. You should back up, do it, do it, do it, but it's not always effective, and I'm going to talk about that later. You know, backups will not always save you, but from hacking and from, you know, hacker attacks. But you should do it as standard practice. I mean, you should do it before you do anything, before you start messing with plugins. I mean, you know, sometimes we're working on a site and we'll have like I'll have 12 or 14 backups on my desktop just in the course of an hour and a half. Because before I do certain things, I make sure I have another backup, you know. So backup all the time. File permissions are really important. 755 for folders, 644 for files. 644 is, I think, what's it, read, everybody can read it, but only the owner can, you know, do something with it. The other one is 755 is the next level up. Everybody can, you know, use it. In other words, some folders need access, WordPress needs access to them, people need access to them. But you want to check those permissions. Most hosting accounts are set up that way. You really want to look and make sure. I have a tool that does it for you automatically. I will get to that later. But you really want to be careful with fire permissions. Delete plugins and themes that aren't in use. You know, plugins and stuff sitting around like that, you know, that aren't being used, guess what? They can still be seen by the outside. They can still be found. If there's some malicious code and if there's some weak code or vulnerability, it can still be searched for, it can be found, even though it's not active. Really, you know, one thing about WordPress is you really want to keep it clean. You really want to keep your installs clean. You don't want to have a lot of, you know, junk and extraneous things there. It's really good to have staging sites. Steve talked about WP Engine has staging sites. It's really good, even if it's just your site, to have a staging site somewhere on a subdomain and do your experiments over there. You know, something that happens to WordPress is, you know, even when a plugin is deactivated and deleted, it might say, ooh, if you deactivate this, or, you know, you're going to lose all your settings. Guess what? They all don't go away. So one of my favorite things is to go through a MySQL database of a client and then email them and say, oh, I see you using rundown 8 or 9 plugins, sometimes 4 and 5 years ago. And they're like amazed, you know. Now, if you open MySQL, you won't see it. It's really snippets of code and transits and things that we know what to look for. I had a large Southern university come to me about 6 months ago, a large, big state university. WordPress site hacked up something fierce. And so I asked the usual questions and I'm like, well, what, oh, no. So I go through the database and he had used better security. He had used a bunch of the big multi-function security plugins and clearly they hadn't worked. So when I called him back, it was great to be able to go, hey man, I see you use better security and data. You said you hadn't tried anything. Oh, yeah, well we did, yeah, you know. So you really don't want to install and deactivate plugins a lot if you can help it anyway. That's another reason the staging site is good. You can keep 2012. 2012 is the standard WordPress theme. It was, you know, developed by the WordPress core team. If any theme is going to be kind of safe and secure, that's it. And you might need it for debugging. You know, if you have something going wrong with a theme you've built, you can flip over to 2012 and see if that same, you know, error is occurring. So it's a good debugging tool. But I'd recommend getting rid of it too. But if you're going to keep a theme, that's the only one to keep, an inactive theme. Get rid of everything else. Clean your site like you clean your kitchen. I'm unbelievable. This e-commerce company, this is one of the biggest sites that biggest companies that we've worked on in a while. The root of their site was so full of stuff, we couldn't even deal with it. It was just unbelievable. It was like, you know, I called them back and said, you know, it's going to cost you thousands of dollars for us to figure out what's going on here. We're going to move the site and install it in a new hosting container. It was just easier to start over somewhere else. Every old CMS, every CRM application they had used, everything was in that root. You are asking for trouble. The university I just talked about, they had an unprotected Joomla install in their root. And they couldn't understand how they'd gotten hacked. And so we did the cleanup. I told them, you've got to get rid of this. It's like having a subway entrance up into the middle of the house. You're asking me to alarm the outside and everything, but I can't alarm the subway entrance. So they didn't want to do that. And what happened? 2 months later, the site's hacked again. He calls me up kind of irate, and I'm like, read those emails. Okay? So I made more money because he had to pay me again. And finally, he got them to understand this Joomla install cannot be in the root with WordPress. So they moved it to a different, you know, we moved it somewhere. So you really need to clean up your root folder. Keep it clean. I mean, just don't have a mess down there. Image files are okay, but once again, use that option indexes so nobody can see those. You know, PDFs, we store a lot of things in the root, but neat, clean, you know, one folder and some subfolders and make sure they're all protected. Common sense things, use a good web hosting company. You know, HostGator is my #1 recommendation. Somebody was asking about good hosting at a less cost. Go to HostGator.
Move from one host to the other?
What's that?
You're going to talk about how to move from one host to the other?
No, I'm not really going to talk about migration. If you sign up with HostGator, they'll migrate your site for you. How's that? They have a shared account that's called the business class. I think monthly it costs like maybe $14.95. They give you an SSL. And an IP address, a dedicated IP address. So for $15 a month, now you've got the SSL and the dedicated IP address, and you're on a really good company. I'm usually not for the big guys, okay? I'm a small businessman, you know, so I'm really usually for the small guy. But HostGator has the money to have professionals on duty 24/7, 365. You can call them up Christmas Sunday morning at 4:15, and someone will answer the phone pretty quickly, and at that time of day, on that holiday, might say, hold on, and come back in 2 minutes and say, okay, I took care of it. It's just that good. DDoS attacks. They've got a 24/7, 365 person. A denial of service attack is when somebody floods your site with traffic. We have a news client up in New England who somebody's been attacking them DDoS for a while. Well, HostGator has the money to have somebody on there. A DDoS attack, your traffic spikes. Well, you can't gate it automatically. You might have put up a picture of Jackie Onassis and Bigfoot, you know, and so you're getting all this traffic. You might have gotten dug. Somebody has to look when traffic spikes and spikes again. Somebody live, a person has to figure out, is this, you know, a distributed attack or is this real traffic? So smaller hosting companies generally don't have that. I mean, HostGator Engine was talking about security. HostGator, they run fantastic security. Their network is really secure. They use border gates. I mean, there's so many layers, you know, before anybody's really going to get to your site. Now, you still have to protect your WordPress site.
How are they for speed?
How many uniques? I mean, it depends how much traffic you're getting. If you're, you know, you're getting anything more than like 10,000 uniques a month or 20,000. They have VPSs, they have larger accounts, they have dedicated servers. Speed really comes down to more about what you do with your site than the hosting. I mean, it has to be really crappy hosting for the hosting affect the speed. Usually it's a badly coded theme, too many calls to the database. I mean, performance is a whole nother issue. 90% of performance, 95% of performance issues I see have to do with the theme and how WordPress is configured, nothing to do with the hosting. So, you know, and what's the difference between going 314 miles an hour and 320 miles an hour? So I have no doubt the WP Engine is faster than, you know, HostGator. But one's going at 320 and the other one's going at 301. Who's really going to see the difference except on a measuring bench, except numbers, statistics I can throw around? So beyond a certain point, unless you have big loads, big numbers of, simultaneous visitors, speed's irrelevant.
Is HostGator the same company that you were saying migrates?
Yeah, they'll migrate your site. Yeah, I believe they, and for free within like so many days of signing up.
I think one of the problems with some hosting providers, they'll say it's unlimited space, unlimited traffic, but they don't really tell you how much it costs if you go over that. So I'm wondering, like I like Small Orange because it's a way to know the limit and then know how much you're being charged if you go over that. Other providers call their services unlimited, but it's not really.
We host a lot of sites. I own a hosting company. I own a small hosting company. We bought it like 2004. I was just on one of the servers looking at some of the stats the other day. We have some really like high traffic sites. They're barely using 20-25% of their capacity, and we watch. And if they get up around 50 or 60 of their bandwidth or whatever, then we move them up to a larger, you know, container. So almost nobody in this room, I doubt, unless you're managing a real high volume site, and by that I mean 100,000 unique visitors a month, speed and capacity is almost irrelevant. I mean, if you're hosting some gigantic photo site where you've got lots of image files, then, you know, storage might be an issue. But the stats you see on every hosting company's site is more than enough storage and more than enough bandwidth for, you know, anything but the really biggest sites. You know, so that's one of those things where you're comparing numbers that are relevant. Once again, 320 miles an hour versus 301 miles an hour. You know, what's the difference? What's the incremental difference? It's not worth worrying about. Keep everything updated. Be wary of free themes. I love it. A guy called me a couple of weeks ago and he was talking. He said, well, you know, I did get this theme for free. It was like maybe a StudioPress theme or one of the expensive themes. And he had gone to one of these like who knows what sites and downloaded it for free. And his site got hacked like shortly thereafter. And at least he admitted that. And I was like, well, you know, you were asking for trouble. You know, you know, Steve?
I mean, anyone be wary, but I don't see any reason to ever get a free theme or free plugin that's not in the WordPress repository. I've never come across one that is legit.
Right.
So, I mean, if it's not in the WordPress repository and it's free, there's no reason.
Yeah. And their site, I mean, I've gone through this, I can't think of the URL. It's a really beautiful site. I mean, you get there, And I mean, it's like, and it's built in WordPress, and the design, the graphics are really nice, and you know, the copy is really good, and all the themes are free. And I'm sure thousands of people all the time, you know, are downloading themes from there. You know, if you're stealing a theme, if they've stolen someone's work and then you go and take it, you deserve to get hacked. So it's just common sense. Keep everything updated. You know, that's a big one, of course. Update your plugins, update WordPress core when it comes out, even if it's not a security release. Update, yes.
How do you know someone's theme is stolen and you have a stolen theme?
If it's a paid theme, how can I be offering it for free if it's a paid theme somewhere else? And it usually will say, it'll say, you know, I'm working on a theme now for Meetup presentations. So it'll say Meetup theme by, you know, from DK company, you know. Well, how can they give it away free if I'm selling it?
Okay.
You know? So yeah, you can find that out. Watch out for social engineering. We get this all the time. People who email us or call us, and they might know a smattering of information about something we're doing, and they act like they're either the client, you know, or they act like they, you know, hey, I need the password for this or something like that. Because we do security, it happens a lot, and you may think, oh, I wouldn't fall for that. These people are very smooth and very good. So maybe they've sniffed traffic and figured out exactly who you are and that you're hosting the site that they might want to crack, and they'll call you and act like the client. You know, hey, this is so-and-so, I work for George, you know, I need the password, you know, he forgot his password, da-da-da. And many people will go, oh, okay, because they've named a name and they know this or they know a few things. And like I said, it's unbelievable. I love it because I'm very wary of it, and you know, and I'll say, can I call you back or whatever, I'll check first. But I just love like the smooth approaches. You know, I got one, you know, today, and finally, you know, like the woman, she wasn't getting anywhere, so she told me F you and hung up. But because I started playing with her. Oh, hold on, let me look for it. Oh, it's really long. Oh, wait, I'll find it in a minute. I'm putting the phone down and going and doing other stuff. So like 20 minutes later, she realized I was messing with her, and she told me to F off, and she left. But it was definitely somebody trying to do social engineering. They were trying to get information out of me. And it was just fun. I love messing with people like that. But watch out for it, because it's really smooth. Like I said, you'll think, I never fall for that. They're really good at it. That's what they do. Layer 4, plugins. This is a good one here. Simple is better. Simple is better. Okay? We think that those giant multifunctional plugins, like Better Security and some of the other ones, that's just a failed approach to security. It's just, there's too much going on. Well, number one, we get a lot of calls from people that have used them and they got hacked. We run staging sites. We run test sites. So we download the plugin, then we install it, and we hack into it. Well, you know, hackers download these plugins too. So we download it, we examine it, and then we go and, you know, install it on the site and we break in, you know, one way or another. Simple is always better. I think with everything with WordPress, I mean, a lot of times there's 3 or 4 plugins that do something. I open them up and look at the number of files. And as long as you know, they were all rated well and there's a lot of users, I use the simplest one, you know, so definitely with security. WP Security Scan is the one that'll help you change the database, the MySQL name. It's really good. Use it once and uninstall it. It's great to check your installation. It gives you a readout on file permissions, you know, passwords, database security, and it can change your database, you know, prefix. So if you've used WP_, but what do you do before you change it? Back up. So you back up your database and you can use WP Security Scan to change that prefix. And in case something goes kablooey, you've got a backup. I see a hand.
I'm just going to add, don't try to change it yourself. Let this software do it. There's some other things that have to be changed and updated when you change that.
Yeah, that's a good point. If you've already used WP_, don't go in and just try to change it in terms of WP config. There's a number of things that have to happen in the MySQL database to change it. So much better to use this plugin. Like I said, the thing to do is when you're first setting up a site, change it right then and there, and then you're good to go, you know, forevermore. But this plugin is really good for that. But you don't need it after that. I think it has some verbiage in there about leave this in for protection. You don't need to leave it in for protection. It's not doing anything for you. Run it once, uninstall it. It'll give you a readout on the general health of the install in terms of security. Something that came up recently was the brute force attack. And I just think that's a big joke. We just sat around laughing about it because it's irrelevant if you've done the minimal things that we've already talked about. If you're not using admin, if you're not using a common password, and if you have any kind of protection on your login, like something like this plugin, that's the end of a brute force attack. A brute force attack is just somebody that's configured a bot that goes to your site and slams a lot of passwords in, tries the common usernames. So all you have to do is not use admin, which is the most common one. If your site, I would not use DK as my username. It's just too obvious, So if you're Steve Jones, don't use Steve as your username. It's just really obvious. But this will take care of it. This, no admin, and a good password, and the brute force thing was irrelevant. And if I see another post coming out, a regurgitated post from somebody about, oh, brute force attacks, and here's what you do, you should have been doing that anyway. That's 101 kind of WordPress security. So that's why we laughed. Every time we see a post and stuff, we started like emailing each other, here's another post. We've got like 50 of them because everybody who's got a blog and thinks they want to be smart writes something about brute force attacks. It is so minor and so irrelevant if you've done these common, simple things. Yes?
Sorry for all my little time-ins here, but plug that in logs the brute force attacks, and you'd be surprised how many WordPress sites are constantly being hammered. You're okay if you cover all these bases, but just don't log those.
Yep.
I'm surprised at how many it's going to show you are being tried.
Yep. Here's another one, simple login lockdown. It does the same thing. Also good. Firewalls. We have a new firewall. We do a lot of custom security. Almost every site that we do, one of the reasons why we've done almost 1,500 sites and they haven't been hacked is we don't just install some plugin, it's customized. So we have a firewall that we really customize to the site, and we've been kind of for the last couple of years trying to figure out could we come up with a generic version that would work. So we finally have, we own the domain WP Fortress. So it's an improved version of our custom firewall that we use and we install on our clients. And intrusion. We do a lot of what we call detection work. You can tell a hacker or a bot usually probes the site. They don't just show up and say, oh, I'll hack into this site. They go fishing for things. So intrusion sends you an alarm when somebody's probing where they shouldn't. You have to learn a little bit about what it is. It'll also help you if you have a crappy theme, because it also picks up 404 errors. So, at first intrusion, if you're getting like, 1 million alarms from intrusion, it means the theme is crappy or you've got a lot of broken links. But in there somewhere, there will be hacker attempts. So sites that we build, we get a few of those every week or something like that. And it just tells us, and that's a lot of how we do our research, because we'll see them fishing for a certain file in a plugin. And when we see that at a number of sites, when we see somebody probing sites for a certain file in a subfolder in a plugin, then we go look at that plugin. Because believe me, the bots and the crackers, they're not, surfing for these things unless they found a weakness or they think there's some weakness there. So intrusion's another plugin. Everybody here is going to get a copy of that. You have to go to this site, my book site. I'm finally coming out with a book on this, wpsecurityhandbook.com/NYC Meetup. Go there, sign up. You will get a copy of Fortress and you will get a copy of Intrusion. They're beta versions. We've got those on about 300 sites now, and that's not really a lot in terms of WordPress. So we're asking you to put in your email address and your name so that we can kind of get back to you and say, are you having any problems? How's it working for you? That kind of thing. So go there, sign up, you can get those plugins, and then there's another plugin to follow shortly. I'm going to take that link down. That's not going to be up there all that long. I don't think it's not a live link. Bingo. Go there, sign up. You can have a copy of Fortress and a copy of Intrusion. Yes?
Should we be wary of downloading that since it's not in
Well, you know who the source is. Sally, one of my Brooklyn members poking at me. Obviously, if you know who the source is, then you don't have to worry about it being in the repository. If Steve says he's got a plugin, I'd take pick lists from Steve. It wouldn't have to be on the repository. Although with Steve, you can't be sure, but but you're pretty safe. You know where to find him. So yes, you know the source, of course. So yeah, Go there, you can have those plugins, and like I said, we're gonna get back to you. We're not gonna bug you, we're not gonna spam you, we're not gonna try to sell you anything, but we are gonna come back to you and ask you, like, you know, hey, how's it working? Did you have any kind of problem? And if you have a problem, you know, if you use it, Fortress sometimes will kick people out if it detects certain plugins, like do some weird functions and have some weird functionality. So what it does, it'll kick somebody out to the home page. Then when we install the custom work, we send our clients a little instruction sheet. It'll be in the README that if you're doing something in the admin, all of a sudden you click something, you're on the home page, the firewall has kind of gone, whoa, woo, what's that? It doesn't happen often though. Like I said, we've been using this for a while, so it very rarely happens, but it does happen. Otherwise, it's pretty. Is Annabelle here? Did Annabelle come? Annabelle was on the Meetup board and said that she was getting, she had 5,000 spams. So just for Annabelle, she's not here, I put that in there. Annabelle works, Annabelle has a baby, and Annabelle said she had over 5,000 spams in her site. So people were asking about that. I think Akismet still works very well. I'm not sure what he was talking about, but you know, if you're not using Akismet, you're really, that's the first thing you should do about comment spam. You know? Yes?
If you use Security, I'm not sure how I'm pronouncing it right.
Security, yeah, what about it?
Do you need both? Do they step on each other?
I'm going to talk about that in a little bit later. No, that has nothing to do with Akismet.
Okay.
Here's an anti-spam plugin. I mean, I just put a few of the ones that we kind of like. You know, it's called Antispam. You know, it's pretty good. If you like captchas, a lot of the spam now, believe it or not, third world countries, thank goodness for globalization, they have companies now overseas where people read the captchas and will send it to people who are spammers. So they literally like go to, and it happens like, you know, because of the speed of the internet. So, you know, a spammer will be there and they call, you know, they email these companies again, and they literally have people there reading the captchas and stuff. So captcha, because of globalization and how cheap you can get labor overseas, it's not always that effective anymore.
I have a question.
Yes. If your German is good.
Captcha is not recommended because of web accessibility, and the reason is many users have disabilities and then they have problems with using captcha.
Okay. I will take captcha off of my list. I'm serious. That's an issue for me. And Sveta knows that already because she and I email, and I've helped her a few times with things. So that's an issue with me, and it's important. Okay. Thank you. Because there are others. I'll substitute something else. Anti-spam B, if your German's good, but it's really effective. And you can see it's had 500,000 downloads, so you don't get that many downloads from WordPress unless it works. No, there's probably an English README or something like that. I mean, if 500,000 people downloaded, there's some way around it, you know. Okay, you asked about security. In my humble opinion, monitoring is a failed proposition, okay? Because monitoring is just what it is on the next line. You know, oops, your site is being hacked, we'll fix it. That just kind of doesn't seem to like work for me. We've spent all our time focusing on stopping sites from being hacked. The things I've given you now will stop 75% of all the hacks out there. So monitoring after the fact is pointless. And, you know, security, I think it's a lot of sizzle and not much steak. And I'm going probably live, and I'll probably get emails, and I know some of those guys. But it just seems like a failed proposition. I don't want to know that my site's been hacked and then, hey, we'll fix it. I want to stop it. So we don't advocate monitoring. We don't use it. We also don't, there's some on-site monitors. There's one called like File Compare or something. And I can't tell you how many times we've had clients or potential clients call up and go, well, I've got this thing in here, and it kind of says that some things changed, but I don't know what it is. And so after a while, either, you know, we've had a lot of people say that they just don't check it, or they don't understand what's in there, because files change with WordPress. Things change. You know, you add plugins, you know, things change. So you really kind of got to know your way around. So we kind of think monitoring is, you know, it's like you can do it, it doesn't hurt, but it's really not the way to secure and really, you know, practice security. It's just too after the fact. Focus on stopping them in the first place. You know, I really don't want to know that they broke in. I want to know that they're out at the fence peeking in. I want to know that they're in my back window looking in. I want to know that they're touching my back door. That's where we spend our time. So intrusion is really what we call a detection system. You know, a probe detection system. It lets us know that somebody is approaching. And our firewall does the same thing. So we really focus on like prevention. If you see a lot of probes and a lot of hacks from the same IP address, although hackers change IP addresses all the time, you can block them by IP. You can look and see what they're trying to get into. I mean, it's just a lot of information. I mean, it's pre-event information. So that's really our focus. I don't recommend monitoring. I'm not going to recommend monitoring. I don't have any monitoring plugins, and we don't put monitoring on any of our client sites unless they absolutely ask for it. And then it's like having a sixth spare tire, you know, that sixth wheel. It's not the fifth wheel, it's the sixth wheel. We stop hackers up front. Now, you notice I said that, you know, the things that we've talked about here will stop 70, 75% of the hackers. If somebody wants to get into your WordPress site, they're going to. You know, it's really hard to stop them. I've done 4 layers of security. My book has 7 layers. I'm not going to get into the other 3 layers. I already told you, the firewall that we use, we customize it. So what you really want to do is you want to stop the average hackers, the skiddies, you know, the kids after school, and everything we've talked about here has done that. Beyond that, you know, it's really subjective, it has to be customized, and it's not something that can be covered in a night. It could be an all-day thing. Now, my book is going to get into that, and that's why I said there's 3 more layers to our security, and in the book I'm going to just give most of that away. But it's too much for a presentation like here now. It would have to be an all-day presentation.
But that being said, it is possible to have a pretty hardened WordPress site.
Yes, the things that I've just given you will harden it down. I mean, it will stop most of the hacks.
No, I mean,
what do you
the
mean?
next step, because just I heard what you said.
Oh, the next step. Yeah, you can harden it down, but if somebody's really determined, you know, they're going to get in. But I mean, that's an advanced hacker. That's somebody that can break into a bank or break into a government site. They're usually not breaking into WordPress sites.
So if I have
I'm serious, somebody's laughing, but it's true. I mean, that's a higher level of hacking ability. And there are people out here who can do that. I have a guy who works for me. One of my guys who works for me can get into just about anything. But that's not what he spends his time doing, you know? And if he was going to do that, it would be Tiffany's site for all the credit cards or something. It wouldn't be your WordPress site.
But if there's a WordPress site for a business, let's say, that starts getting a lot more business, is it ultimately, it's WordPress, right? Is there a point when they say, you know what, for security purposes, you better transfer your whole site to...
Well, number one, for e-commerce, you should not be storing credit card information on your site. You should be using a payment processor. And yeah, we work on a lot of really large e-commerce sites, and we pretty much, but see, there's a balance between security and usability. You know, I can max out the security, but it's no fun working in the back end. It's not much fun for visitors. So like everything, there's a balance there, because as you know, more and more security impedes upon the normal functionality of WordPress and its usability. So there is a balance there, and you can tip it too far. Now, our site, wpsecurity.com, gets hacked, I mean, attempts all the time. They don't get in, but all the time. Let me see if I can call up. I'll show you just what I mean by that. Here's a question, yes?
Yeah, I'm just wondering, sort of brought to my mind, are WordPress sites more vulnerable just because they're database driven than like a standard HTML?
Oh yeah, anything that's database driven. Because you're actually, you know, users that even visitors that come to the site, they're interacting with the database through the site. So things are changing, it's dynamic. And see, WordPress has to have certain access to the database, so that's what gets exploited. So yes, HTML sites are ultimately, nobody's hacking an HTML site. There's nothing there to really hack and attack.
But if an HTML site is also database driven,
then yes, if it's MySQL, and it's got to have some PHP in there somewhere. Do you know what server-side includes are? SSI?
I've heard of it.
Okay, SSI is pretty good because it just uses tokens and it's really not a database. SSI, server-side includes. That was the precursor to WordPress, where you could set up tokens for your header and your footer and your content and just change that information. So it was kind of a chipping and stone version of a CMS. Yes?
Could you recommend the most secure e-commerce plugin?
The question was, can I recommend a secure e-commerce plugin? Not without the additional security. So WooCommerce is pretty good. Shop, S-H-O-P-P is pretty good. Do not use WP e-commerce. It's the worst thing going. You'll regret it. You'll rue the day. You'll be so sorry. Here is, let's see, I'm going to push this over here. Here are some of the intrusions that are on our WP security site. 614, 610. Just scroll on down. That's people trying to hack into our site. So it's just constant. It's just nonstop, you know? On and on and on and on and on. And those are just some that I kept so I could show you. So it's nonstop. But WP security is no fun to use. I mean, we've got that thing on maximum lockdown so that no one, knock wood, no one has gotten in yet. But it's really not much fun to use. So we don't update it. We don't blog over there. But, you know, because we're a target. I think it would be big props for somebody if they could break into our site. So.
Yeah, I was calling, are you the guys that do the WordPress security plugins? Is that the one you guys do?
Which WordPress? There's tons of WordPress security plugins.
I think it's the better WordPress security plugin.
That's one of those complicated ones that we don't recommend. No, that's not ours. She's asking about a particular plugin. You know, no, that better WP security is not. WP Fortress is the first time we're releasing a public, you know, firewall plugin, and that's the one that you have to sign up to get a beta version of. Like I said, those complex, multifunctional security plugins, some of them work pretty well, but we get, first off, we get a lot of calls from people who've been hacked using those. And then we got a lot of people where, you know, they tell us, well, it messed up the site. It caused some problems and stuff. I think it's just a failed proposition. You've got all your eggs in one basket. You know, I mean, that's what this layers thing is about. Okay, you've cleaned up your computer. You're not communicating poorly. You know, you're going to take care of the database. You know, I mean, it's like, it's different. It's layers. It's like peeling an onion. And each of those layers adds up. Now, you know, certainly using some of the plugins, the other plugins like, you know, Better Security is more convenient and easy. But the bottom line is, we've actually done about 1,800 sites. We've done almost a little over 1,400 for clients, and the other 300 are our own. And none of them have been rehacked. Not a single, actually, I'm sorry, 2 have been rehacked recently. One was that large university, and one was a small church in Washington, D.C. And why were they rehacked? Because both of them did not do everything we told them to do. They didn't implement SSL, and each of them did something, you know, didn't do something else we told them to do. And that's it. They got hacked. Otherwise, we're like 99.9%, you know, in terms of no reattacks.
This question does sound completely stupid.
No, there's no stupid question.
The whole layering thing, like not putting all your eggs in one basket.
Yes.
Is that why I don't see like the famous names up there, like Norton Security or Antivirus? I don't notice.
No. I don't think much of those products. I think AVG is better. I think Komodo's better. I think Norton was great when Peter Norton was running it. But he sold it for $187 million and, you know, got crazy down in Guyana or wherever it is. So, you know, that's bloatware. We call that bloatware. They, you know, every year they come out with new features and bloat it up so they can charge you again. You know. And that's what many companies do. You know, even AVG's paid products are a bit of bloatware. You know,
Do you have any opinion? Have you ever heard of something called Viper? Like where it's kind of a joystick, and plug it in, and you never have to update it again. Ever heard of it?
No. What is it?
It's an antivirus.
And if you never have to update it again, it can't be that good because virus. that immediately tells me there's issues because there's always new stuff coming on. We have clients that always ask us like, is this going to protect my site? Da 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 da. And it's like, well, it's going to protect you about everything we know about. Well, what about in the future? And so I always tell them, well, go to your doctor and tell him you want a shot against a disease that's going to come up in 2 years, but you don't know what the disease is. You know? It just can't be done. So, you know. But there's always something new coming up. The devil is always at work.
So there's a couple of things I'm surprised that haven't brought up yet. Have you worked with any plugins that support multi-factor authentication?
That important?
Multi-factor authentication is
yeah, some of the, I'm kind of keeping this up to, I mean, that's a little bit more advanced, and so, you know, yes.
Just two-factor.
Yeah, two-factor is good. I was trying to keep this like a little bit lighter, easier up the middle, but that's good. Yeah.
Are there plugins that you use
There's a couple of plugins. I can't think of the names of them, but there's a couple of plugins that do two-factor. Yeah. Yes.
You mentioned e-commerce plugins before. What's your opinion of WooCommerce and from an e-commerce, from a security standpoint? Good, bad, different?
The site has to be secure. There's nothing wrong. There's nothing wrong with those e-commerce plugins. But if you don't do the other security, you're going to get hacked.
Right. I guess I meant something, if you were aware of something exploiting specifically.
It can be exploited, just like any other thing. Somebody will find a vulnerability. That's why this other protection is kind of generic. It'll protect against anything. So I don't know of any flaws in WooCommerce or in Shop. No, because they would know, because those guys are making a lot of money and they would take care of it. But that doesn't mean that somebody won't discover one. Something that's normal becomes a flaw once somebody figures out how to exploit it. And there's people who sit around doing that more than we sit around trying to, develop sites and keep them secure. We're running low on time, so I want to skip ahead to something really quick, because we're getting into it. I showed you what happened to my site before. I thought you might like to see some of the hacks we see. Okay, this is the kind of stuff that we find on sites. Yeah.
And it says hack by?
Yeah. Oh yeah. Look at this stuff. This is all what we found. These are screen captures of what we found on sites that we've gone to repair. Some of the better ones. Here's one of my favorites. I love that one. Anybody see that movie? I think it was Invasion of the Body Snatchers, the remake. Donald Sutherland at the end. Oh. Your system was broken. And my all-time favorite is coming up. This is our number one favorite. We've got several hundred of these. Look at that thing. That was a very creative hacker. But the bottom line is, you don't want this stuff on your site. So where I was going with the fiction is, fiction usually comes from you. Fiction, Facts and Fiction was the name of this. The fiction comes from the audience. It's the questions you ask, it's the things you've read, it's the things you've heard, it's the things that you wonder, do I really need to do this? The answer is yes. So if you do all of those things, watch out for the regurgitated blog posts. You go to some blog, and it might be an authoritative blog, and they've written a post about WordPress security like they know. And I call that regurgitated posting, because they've read it somewhere else, or they've gotten it off of, whatever, and then they write a post like they know what they're talking about. So watch out for that. If you don't come to us, there's other sources like Corey, go to security, ask them. Go to check their blog, I don't think much of I think those are great guys. I don't think much of their service in terms of security and WordPress, but they know their stuff. They're earnest, and they do a good job at what they do. So go check with them. That's it. Hope this was helpful. Thank you.